Welcome, everyone, to this quarter's Iron IQ. Very excited to be welcoming Cindi Filer to be explaining all the things in and outs of HR. Well, all the things in and out sounds like a lot. We only have an hour. So she's going to hit the highlights of HR issues. And so we're excited to have her on. But before we begin, I'd love to open us up in prayer. I'll give us kind of a brief breakdown of what we're going to cover today, and then I'm going to let Cindi let her rip. So if you would, pray with me. Lord, we are excited for this opportunity to just learn and grow in our understanding of how to manage people. And Lord, I was talking today with a friend about the phrase of it's not personal, it's business. Well, it's like with people are involved in business, then it becomes personal, and personal things can be very tough. And so um, we need help. And so I pray for Cindi as she's sharing. I pray that you would just give us eyes to see and ears to hear what we need to hear for our businesses, and how to lead our employees and the ins and outs of things we need to be paying attention to. And Lord, I pray all of that would be for the good of our companies, the good of our people that you have gifted us to manage. And we ask for your favor and wisdom. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen. So, Cindi Filer is our guest today. For those of you who may be new to the Iron IQ, this is kind of an extracurricular time that Iron Forums puts on at least once a quarter. We're looking to increase these. But as you know, we meet once a month in our forums. We cover different topics. For example, the last 2 months, we've been covering marketing, but there's really only so much learning that you can do in a half-day session. So this is one of the tools that we use to hopefully get more information, wisdom, and knowledge into your hands so that you can grow. And so Cindi is a friend of numerous ministries like ours. She speaks to C12, she speaks to Convene. I'll hit some of those in just a second. But she is an expert in these things. She's got 35 years of experience helping businesses find great people. And not just that, but also keep great people, big part of HR. She graduated from Wake Forest with a degree in mathematical economics, which is impressive sounding in and of itself. And then she started her HR career with Delta Airlines and WorldSpan, which is also a Delta company. But 30 years ago, she took a leap and founded her own company as a small business owner, creating Innovative Outsourcing, which is a recruiting and fractional HR firm that helps small businesses hire the right talent and build workplaces where people actually want to stay. Cindi loves sharing her experiences to help business owners navigate today's toughest HR challenges. She's a sought after speaker on retention and other HR hot topics. And she's regularly speaking at other CEO groups, like I mentioned, C12, Convene. She speaks at industry associations and also at major conferences. She's also a Vistage chair, for those of you who are familiar with Vistage. And she just loves working with leaders to help grow stronger teams. So that's Cindi in a nutshell. And Cindi, before we dive into the hot topics on HR, I loved hearing how you ended up starting your own company and the need that you saw and were able to fill. I think it's just a fascinating start. So if you want to start there, and then I'll kind of lead us into the actual topics.
Yeah, absolutely. Nice to meet you guys and be here. I see a couple of familiar faces and people that I've known, and so just thankful to get to talk to you guys today. I started my business. This year is year 30 for us, which is kind of a big year. We're like creating this new logo that has a 30 on it, so that's kind of fun. You figure you've got to celebrate the wins, right? Being a business owner is it's great. It's also hard. And so when you celebrate those wins, I just feel like it's a good thing. So anyway, we're very, very happy to still be here doing similar to what we started with. So I was as Harrison said, I was in corporate HR with Delta. I got pregnant with my son, Matt, who's now 31, and decided I was going to be a stay-at-home mom. I mean, it was I kind of explained to Harrison, it's a long story, but it was kind of a God thing. I wasn't really planning on staying home, and over a course of about 24 hours, through a sermon, through a friend, through a couple of different things, I felt like God had really spoken to me and told me that I was supposed to stay home. Not that everybody's supposed to stay home, not that that's right for everybody, but that I was supposed to stay home. And so I went from being the double income, no kids, to, oh my gosh, I'm staying home. And we lost about 2/3 of our income when I started staying home. I started staying home, just felt like it was the right thing to do, felt like God was calling me to it, but really quickly realized that I really missed corporate. I really missed HR. I really missed what I was doing. But I really wanted to be faithful to that calling. So I decided to look around for, are there part-time opportunities, so that when Matt was napping, could I do some work? And that was back in the day when the internet was just kicking up. Can we believe that? And I noticed that there wasn't anything. And I thought, it's really a shame that there is no opportunity for part-time for moms. And there just really wasn't back then. I know now it's prolific, but then it wasn't. So I started innovative outsourcing, kind of as a God thing, to help moms who wanted to stay in the workforce part-time and still and also be stay-at-home moms. So we still service that population greatly. It's still my favorite thing. But then the companies that we started working with also wanted full-time people. So not only do we do part-time and full-time permanent placement in the areas of finance, HR, and admin, but we also do now HR consulting, and it's all with part-time HR people. So kind of true to the values that we had. So our entire staff, besides myself and my son, Matt, and then Matt works for us now, who actually I left work for. He claims he is the co-founder, which is not true because he is 31. However, he believes that I would not have started this company if he hadn't have been born. So he
Indirect. It's
yeah.
indirect.
Yeah, he thinks it's really cool. So anyway, that's where we are at Innovative Outsourcing today. We have 15 staff members and we have 55 employees. So just thankful to have gotten to be staffing people when they're in their period of, oh my gosh, how am I going to make ends meet? And also in those periods where their kids go to college, or they may not need that part-time job and get to do the full-time work. So anyway, so along those lines, I have gotten to talk to lots of leaders over the years. And we started really focusing on this HR piece because we would hire somebody for a company. And then we would notice that maybe 6 months later, sometimes they would call us and say, we need another whatever, because that person left. And so the first time I thought, oh gosh, this is my recruiter. So we got to figure out what's wrong. The third time somebody leaves, you recognize we got a culture problem. We might have a retention issue. So that's when we started about 15 years ago, really deep diving in the HR consulting space, because it was great to place people. But then at the second half, if we weren't really servicing them well from an HR perspective, a lot of these small business owners did not have the tools they needed to keep people. So we're going to talk a little bit about retention today. But I think it's important that a small business owner knows the tools that they need to be able to compete with the bigger companies for talent. So
Yeah, that's good. And you and I were speaking the other day, and it kind of dawned on me that HR, it seems to be one of those issues that people don't think about until they have to. Like you're saying, they're losing employees and they're going, what's wrong? So it now becomes this reactive thing versus a proactive culture thing. And so I think that's why this is going to be so pivotal for our members to hear, because it is easy. It's like marketing. You can put it on the back burner and probably survive for a while without thinking about it. But when something goes sideways,
yeah.
you don't want to be in a reactionary position. So what are real quick, I love that you brought up retention. I think that's definitely something we talk about. Um, what are some of the other major things, just thinking of our members are small business owners, it's 2025. What are kind of the major headlines, major topics within HR that we at least need to be aware of, and then we can dive into some of those.
Yeah, so retention is probably the number one. And the way I know is hot right now is because that's what people ask me to speak on. When I go back to, I do industry associations and all those kind of things, and CEO groups all the time, and so they're my litmus test on what's happening out there. So I'm still getting a ton of retention talks, even though we see that people are laying off people in some cases, and some industries. We are still seeing that, and I'll give you a stat a little bit later, but we're still seeing that we're at such a low unemployment rate right now that it is hard to find people and it's hard to keep people. So finding people is really hard. I was just talking to my recruiter today, and we're going to talk about a reason for that in just a minute. But keeping people is really hard. The comp is really hard. It's hard to know how much to pay people these days because salaries are changing so frequently. We used to say every 2 years do a salary study. Now I'm saying every 6 months.
Wow.
Um, in some cases. So, and you used to be able to look online and figure out salaries with like salary.com, but that information is about a year stale. So you really can't look at it. So salaries was a big thing. And then the latest thing that I keep getting asked about, and now I'm doing a speech on it for Vistage because I'm a Vistage speaker, is I'm doing mental health. And that is a big thing. So, not only we're looking at it from the perspective of how do we create workplaces where people can thrive from a low stress as possible standpoint and high support. And then we're also looking at it from a labor law perspective. Like, what am I required to do if somebody comes and says that they need an accommodation and they need to stay home, 5 days a week? What do we do with that? And then the third side is from a therapist point of view. What should we say and what shouldn't we say as people that work in a company? We're not,
Right.
I mean, maybe some of you are therapists, but I'm not a therapist. So I've got
Right.
to be very careful where that
Where are
line is.
those lines?
And we got to train our managers on how to have empathy, but also have those lines. So I get a lot of those questions right now. So that's pretty hot. Benefits are hot because benefits, costs are high. What we're seeing is renewals this year is not as high as they have been in the past couple of years, but they're still ridiculously high. So what are options for that? That seems to be a big thing. And then the job hopping. I know that means retention, but it's these millennials and the Gen Zers job hopping, where they believe that their tenure at a company should be 18 months. What do we do with that? How do we change that mindset, or how do we live with that? So those are just some of the kind of hot ones.
Yeah, that's good. Well, since retention seems to be the hottest, let's start there, since that's what everybody seems to be talking about. So, can you dive a little deeper? Why is that important? And then, probably more importantly, strategies that small businesses can use uh, to increase their retention rate.
And some of these are. I'm going to talk about first about some things that cost money, right? Because there's some things that cost money to retain people, and then there's some things that don't cost money. May cost a little time, but don't cost money. So maybe I'll look at those things. But
Yeah.
some of the stats. So as he said, I have a degree in mathematical economics. That means that I don't do anything with that degree anymore. All it means is that I love the stats side of HR, because I think if we look at measuring and understanding from surveys and those kind of things, how we can input things into our HR side of the house and see how they actually come out on the other end, I think we're seeing we can have CEOs understand that spending time on those things matters, right? Because there's all these stats about organizational health. I mean, the statistic is that if you have organizational health in your company, which basically is focusing on the things we're about to talk about, that you have a 41% greater chance of having higher profitability. I mean, the stats are incredible about how do we focus, and do we take the time to focus on these things and spend money on these things? Because a lot of times when I go to a CEO, they're like, we don't have time to talk about that. It's fungible, it's soft, but we don't have time for that. We're just, oh, is HR more than just, putting them on the payroll, giving them a,
Give it some
their
PTO here and there, and
onboarding them, isn't that just what HR is? And so
don't
in
harass people.
Yeah, and usually in a small company, you've got either two people that do this. You probably don't have an HR person. If you're under 100 employees, you probably have your controller that is tasked with HR, or you probably have that high level executive assistant or office manager that's doing a lot of the things that, and you're calling her HR or him HR, right? So those are usually the people that you have, because you just don't have access to that talent. In many cases, especially if you're a company, say under 30, you really don't have access to that talent. So I'll tell you a little bit about what we're doing to that end at the end. But we need to make sure that we have those great policies in place to keep people. So, again, right now, as of a survey from Gallup, 47% of US employees are currently watching or actively seeking a new job. I mean, 47%. I mean, back before 2019, that number was about 18%. So the world has shifted, and that means that a lot of people are looking. There was a statistic in something that I have not verified, but I did see it in a magazine, and it was 72% of people are consistently on job boards. 72% are on job boards, kind of seeing if there's anything passively they're looking for. So again, really important that we know that.
Is
So,
this, do you think this is from, are we just that unsatisfied as a culture? Like what was it 10, 15 years ago? Was it significantly less? Or we kind of on this trend of people just like, I'm always looking for the next best thing because of Instagram has gotten me on that of like there's always something better. Is it a benefits thing? Or what are they pointing to for that dramatic increase?
I love that you said that. Okay, we're going to find out. So, a couple of things are things that we can change. So, of the people that left their jobs at 2023 and early 24, which is the stats we have right now in the world, low pay, 63% of people left for low pay, right? Now, it's low pay in their mind, right? That doesn't mean the pay was really low, but in their mind, they left for pay. That's 63%. 63% left for opportunities for advancement. So they didn't see a path at their company for staying. And then 57% of the people that left said they felt disrespected at work. Unbelievable. We've never seen that stat that high. Now, some of you may be thinking, well, we can't, because they're used to likes and everything else on social media, we can't like make them all feel like they're so happy and they have the greatest job ever. But there are some interesting stats in there that I think we need to kind of look into. So let's start with salary, because I think salary is really important. It is right now, it is the most important reason people are leaving jobs, right? And before the pandemic, it was the second most important thing. They love how they felt at their job, and employee engagement, which we're going to talk about in a minute, was first, but now it's pay, right? And it makes sense because we're living in kind of a high inflation period. So that makes total sense. So we need to make sure that that salary is competitive, and we're not giving all the new people all the salary and the people that are sitting in the company. That's called job parity. So if we're looking across the company with the same jobs in the same backgrounds, we need to make sure that we're not paying the new people $15,000 more because then the old people leave. And not old meaning, old like me, but that they've been there for many years. So again, we need to look at salary parity, which is across organizationally, but we also need to look at where are they leaving to, and are they leaving for more money, and can we do something about that? You need to be at market or above market and know what industry you're in, that you need to make sure how far above market you need to be. If you're a CPA in Atlanta and you're hiring a CPA for a CPA firm, you're going to need to be about 35% over market to be able to pick somebody up, right? That's a CPA, because that's a huge need in the city of Atlanta. If you are an executive assistant, probably not so much. So you probably don't have to have that much of a bump. So again, you need to be really well aware of what's going on in not only your industry, but also those jobs that you're actually hiring. And it could be very different for one job versus the other. So salary still remains incredibly important. I talk about all these things that keep people as levers. So you don't necessarily need to use all the levers, but salary is a big lever, right? To keep people, to have people come to you, so to retain and to hire, salary is probably the biggest lever. So if you can pay, if you are a Chick-fil-A corporate and you can pay 1.5 times what everybody else pays for a job, you probably don't have to worry about these other levers, right? They do, but you don't have to, right? But most small businesses can't do that. So let's look at some other levers. So some of the other reasons people leave is health benefits, like 401k, regular health benefits, and PTO. PTO is the secret weapon for small businesses in my mind. So whenever I consult with a small business and they're really having a hard time competing against the Googles, the big companies, those kind of things, PTO is a great place direct them. Because at a small company, you can really give more and more PTO, and you may impact profitability very little by giving more and more PTO. I know there's a cost to that because you're not getting work done, but if you have mostly professionals that work for you, your white collar workers, your professionals, those are generally going to get the same amount of work done, whether they have 2 weeks of vacation or 4 weeks of vacation. That's just a proven fact because, we all go on vacation and the week before and the week after, we're killing ourselves to get the work done, right? So, and it looks so much better for you to offer more vacation for those people, and you can bring them in, especially our millennials and our Gen Zers. They're looking for time off, right? They're looking for a lot of things, but one of them is time off. So if we can give that, now I understand for my restaurants, for my manufacturing lines, if I have too much vacation, it terribly impacts my bottom line. However, I would say that if you can give a week more vacation and you have to hire another human for that manufacturing line, it actually may work out better for you because even though that cost is higher, you may not see as much attrition, and therefore, your labor costs over a period of a year actually go down, even though you've had to hire that additional person or two to be on the line to give more vacation. So, it's all a math problem, right? And so you've got to make sure, because we got to keep people. We're seeing crazy things like 4-day work weeks. That's not 4 10s, those are 4 8s, paying full-time work for 4 8 work weeks, so 32 hours. And we're seeing that even those companies that adopt that with professional employees, they're seeing 12% more productivity in a 32-hour week versus a 40-hour week because we waste so much time at work, right? So not everybody can do that. But again, these are the levers, right?
Cindy, do you know the average? I can't, I heard it the other day. I almost didn't even believe it, but what the average worker, how many hours a day they actually work of hard work?
I don't know that answer. I would say
I,
in the United States, it's a lot higher than anywhere else.
yeah, but it was, I heard it, this, don't quote me on this, but it was like in an 8 hour workday, the average, you combine the deep work that people do, and it's like 2 hours.
Yeah, so
The
that's
rest of the time
the
is
theory
fluff and
behind.
waste. And
Yeah, that's the theory behind this 4-hour work week, and they actually
yeah.
promote it. I think maybe many of you have read it overseas in London and all of England. And I know that's surprising we did it in Europe, but what they found out was people were so excited about having that day off that they actually worked much harder. They got rid of a lot of meetings that were kind of the unnecessary meetings, kind of that death my meeting, get rid of the bad meetings. And they also worked through lunch. I think that's what they did. And they found out that the stress went down, the lifestyle was better, and those people were willing to work really hard to keep that. And weirdly, productivity was, to your point, like I said, 12% more working 4 days a week, which is crazy. And you may see that, well, that's never going to happen in the United States. I was just speaking to Vistage groups in Charlotte, and in one group, I had 14 people, 3 of which were going to 4 8s. So I think this is happening.
I
So
mean,
I would,
if you look to your point, if you look at the numbers, why wouldn't you? If it's
yeah,
like if you increase productivity and you look awesome as an employer because you're going, hey, you get a 3 day weekend every week, and from your end productivity goes up, but why wouldn't we move to that?
yeah, think of that lever. Think about what you can do with salaries. I mean, you can't pay low, but think about, if I have right now a really hard position in Atlanta that we place a lot are controllers, really tough position to fill. If we tell them it's 4 8s instead of a regular and you get your regular salary, we're going to have people out the door to pick from. You are going to get the A+ candidate. I mean, some of the pushback has been, I have customers that need to reach us 5 days a week, right? And I can't tell them that, Jane doesn't work 5 days a week, so there's some pushback there. But the benefit that you get may outweigh it, and it would probably be more beneficial for some organizations than for others, just based upon their industry. But again, these are levers. That doesn't mean everybody's got to do it, but if you can't pay a high salary, can you give more PTO? Can you give more time off? Can you give possibly even consider a 4-day work week? And then that next period, and that next thing that people stay for is that career path. Because you said, why are they leaving? Well, a lot of them think that if they go to work for a small business where they're working right now, they're going to die in that position because there's no place for them to move. Because there's no accountant one, accountant two, accountant three sometimes in a small company. So they don't know where their path is. And oftentimes, all it takes is the leader of the company, the CEO, actually investing in them and saying, hey, I can see you working here long term. And the way that I see that is, this is your job now, but in 2 or 3 years, I can see you being good at this and this. I mean, we're not promising him jobs, we're not promising him anything, but if we really do try to speak into people, if we can keep them and, increase their, not only their, what they make from a comp standpoint, but also what they're learning and how we're investing in them, that will keep them possibly at your company because
So
they're
you're
always for the next thing. And if you're not speaking to them about the next thing, they're going to find a company who is.
so you're really just planting seeds.
Planting
You're just
seeds.
going, hey, this could be, this is what I'm thinking. I see this in you. So you're encouraging them and you're not paving a hard path, but you're going, here's where we're headed. That seems really easy. That doesn't seem like that takes a ton of,
Now it could backfire on you because if you say I could see this, this, and this, and then 5 years later they're sitting in the same job with the same amount of money, and you're not doing that, well then shame on us because we kind of oversold and underdelivered, right?
okay,
But
okay.
if we can do that, if we see that that is a general possibility in our company, again, we have to have that strategy in small businesses, and I run a small business that either they're going to stay for a small period of time, meaning 3 to 5 years, that's all we kind of can expect because we can't increase their pay or increase their interesting job, or we have to create a path. We've got to create a company that has a path, right?
Hmm.
Or hire people that just don't want to move. And there are some people like that. Part-time people are great people like that. They may be moms, they may be dads, they may have another company on the side. They're not looking for, to be the VP. They're just looking to think about my part-time HR people. They're just wanting a part-time HR job and it's not like they're needing to move up. So you've got to either create the path, you've got to realize you're going to rehire that job every 3 to 5 years, or you've got to hire people who are not looking for that challenge. So,
For
but
the,
not talking
for
about
the,
it, they're leaving.
when you are, for the people that you say we want them longer than 3 to 5 years, are you just kind of giving them the next step? Or are you kind of going a few steps out, or does it depend? I mean, I guess as a small company, you may not know what your growth looks like after 5 years, so you may only be able to give the next step. So maybe it's dependent upon, but I'm
It's the next step. I don't think they need, I don't think our millennials and our Gen Zs are trying to figure out what am I going to do when I'm 50,
right.
right? I think they're just trying to think, is there a next job for me here? And do I
And
have
is it
for that?
and is it an increase? Is it up? As
Mm-hmm.
long as I'm moving up, I'm probably okay. I had a job where there was tons of growth and opportunity, but they were not great at telling me what the career trajectory
Yep.
was. And I came to them and I said, I need to know. And they
Yep.
came back and they said, we don't know. And guess what? I
You look,
left. I
yeah.
left. I had to. I'm in my 30s. I got a
A
family. I'm
lot,
like, I need to know where I'm going.
a lot of times I'll talk to CEOs about this after they've lost 2 or 3 people. That's what happens. If you don't have an HR person, you generally call me when the house is burning down. Like, oh
Right.
my gosh, I got to call Cindi because I lost 3 people, right? Or the EEOC, I got a letter from the EEOC, like something is amiss. And that's when all of a sudden we recognize we actually need HR. But
Mhm.
when those 3 people that are all the young people all leave at the same time, I go to that guy and I'm like, why didn't you tell him what they could do? And he's like, I never even thought about it. Right. So we as leaders need to think about what we're saying, and we need to make a priority to say it. Even if we think this could be it, it's better than not saying anything, because not saying anything means that you're not thinking about it and you're just going to leave them in the dungeon. Right. And so that's not good. I would say that just having that conversation is better than not having the conversation, even if
And
you
as
know what it is.
Yeah, and it's as as Christian business owners, I feel like it's a part of taking care of your people and going, I understand you have a family. I understand that you have kids. I understand that they need this and I'm a part of providing for those needs because I'm your employer. And so I want to I have a desire for you to grow and thrive, not just because that makes me grow and thrive, but like I have a true desire to help you. So let's look at that. And I'm considering you as I'm thinking about how the business is growing. You're a part of that, and you're a part of that piece. And let's talk about what that could look like. I feel like as a Christian, especially, that should be something we're proactively thinking about.
I mean, I always feel like, and one of the things I talk about when I talk to CEOs is that we get these employees for a period of time, right? God kind of drops these people in our lap for, it could be 1 year, it could be 10 years, it could be 20 years. And so we get such an opportunity to speak into them, to be the kind of leader that we wanted somebody to be for us, or somebody was for us. You think about that one leader that, gosh, I wouldn't be anywhere where I am today if I hadn't had that one leader, and we get to be that leader. And so not only are we doing these things, we want to keep people, but we're doing these things because we want to develop people. I'm in business mostly because I want to lead people, right? I want to make sure other people are leading people well, right? We're not in business just to make money. That is kind of an offshoot, which is awesome, and that we kind of have to stay in business. But we get to take somebody from the first time they drop into our company until they leave, and we need to look at that as kind of ministry, right? That is ministry for us. It's how do we grab them when they are, and when they leave, they're better off than when they came. And that's not just money, but it's how do we speak into them? How do we encourage them? How do we develop them? How do we give them more money so they can take care of their family? All of those things. So again, as Christian business owners, like you said, this shouldn't be, oh my gosh, I just got to check the box. We gotta have the conversation, right? But we're supposed to be developing them. So, that leads to development. One of the reasons people leave companies is because they don't feel like they're developed. So are we doing those things? I mean, back in the day, it used to be that you had to go to the West Coast and pay $10,000 for training programs. That was kind of leadership development. It's not like that anymore. I mean, we can find inexpensive things on the internet. We can have a speaker come in that doesn't cost a ton of money. We can do things that people feel like they are investing in me, right? So those people want to feel invested in. They don't want to just feel like I'm doing a job and I'm getting paid and it's a transaction, but they want to feel invested in. So a lever is investing. A lever is showing them a career path, and a lever is investing in them. So what are we doing to develop them? Are we asking the question during their employer reviews, what is important to you about being developed? If I were to develop you, what are the things that you would like to be developed in? What am I seeing for you, and what are you seeing for you? And so how do we make that happen for you? So that should be part of an annual or a twice a year review, where you are actually asking them the question and then you're following through on those things. I can understand that you can't send them to a $5,000 training program, but you could say, hey, I can't do that, but let's see what else we can do, right? Mentoring programs within your company. If you have, more experienced employees and younger employees, great to pair them together and have a mentoring program. That's great for hire as well, hire and development, and retention. So really having mentoring programs or leadership development programs are very sticky. It keeps people at companies, not only because they feel like you're investing in them, but they feel like they are improving and they want to improve. So make sure we're focusing on some of those things. And then I always talk about making sure we think about some unique benefits. And when I think about unique benefits, this is so interesting. I had a young person the other day. He was at a company, small business, and I get to do one-to-one sometimes with companies with their employees. And so looking for overall culture. So I meet one-to-one with employees and I ask three things, what was going well, what's not going well, and if you were king for the day, what would you do differently? And for some reason, I think it's because I look like a grandma that they kind of unload and give me everything, which is really fun. And one of the things that they tell me a lot of times is these craziest things. Like, I'm like, why do you stay at the company? There are a lot of places you can go. And one guy in one company said it's the gym benefit. I was like, you make $65,000 a year. It's the gym benefit? And he's like, yeah, it's kind of like they care about my health. And I'm thinking that employer is paying $120 a month for a gym benefit. And if I swear, if you gave that kid, another $1,400 a year in salary, which would have been the equivalent, that wouldn't be as much of a bang for the buck as the gym benefit. So again, are you looking at unique things? We look at things like, if you can do gym memberships, or if you can do things like Financial Peace University, great thing to pay for your employees. Again, the number one reason people are stressed out right now from a mental health standpoint, we may talk about in a minute, but it is finances. And so I have a lot of people that are paying for financial peace for their people. Things like free snacks and drinks, lunch every once in a while, those kind of unique benefits. Just to make sure that you're doing some of those. The newest one on the block is nutritional counseling. Everybody wants to be healthy. So are we bringing in somebody to be a speaker possibly, or do some things to talk about health and nutrition and mental health? And are we having those? So we're caring for their whole person, not just what they do at work.
And I love all of that, and it's funny to hear what people, the gym membership or even yeah, but even if to the small companies out there go, I can't pay, some of our people may be strapped for, I can't pay for lunch every so often or whatever. But you mentioned it earlier of the amount of tools and stuff that we have online
Yep.
and the free things that are online. Like, so say it's the financial thing, but you can't pay Dave Ramsey to do a financial peace university for your employees. You can pull his videos and go, we're going to once a week go through a video and there's free worksheets and we're just going to go through those together, and you're showing that you care. They're still getting the content and the benefit, and you get it for free because it's just out there. I mean,
Now,
there's,
one of
or
my favorite things I've done with that, I have a client that had zero budget for leadership development. I mean, no budget at all. And so we had him do books. We had him do like Ideal Team Player, Raving Fans. And so the CEO actually
right,
sat once a week and went through these books and did a book study with people. I mean, fantastically great, right? Doesn't cost them much money. I mean, they did buy a book for each employee, or they can get them to do the online, the piece online. But what a great thing. Not only then did that employee get the leadership development or whatever came from that book, but also they got the time with the leader.
right.
Because young people specifically, actually people my age too, they want time with the leader. So is the leader doing that? So some of the cheapest stuff, to be honest, is the most effective stuff.
Yeah, it's building camaraderie, it's building that team culture, and they get a personal benefit out of it. Yeah, and it costs $12 on Amazon per employee.
Yeah,
I love that.
absolutely. There's so
That's
many
great.
good options. In fact, we had a department at Delta that I was doing some consulting for. They had, again, $0. This was a couple of years ago. And we did a book study with just the leader of that area, not of course the CEO of Delta. That would have been awesome, but that didn't happen. And as the people were talking about what they loved in their job that year, it was the number one thing on everybody's list was book club. They called it book club. And it was on their free time. It was at lunch, when they really weren't supposed to be working. So again, think outside the box, think of some different stuff that you can do.
That's
Um,
great.
and then the biggest thing, and I'll end on employee engagement, on retention on this one, is you got to focus on employee engagement. So employee engagement, the definition of that is that you feel very connected to your company. That if I'm engaged as an employee, I'm going to feel like where I work is where I should be working. Things are going well. I enjoy my job. I feel like I'm productive at my job. I feel like my managers support me, encourage me, and keep a high bar for me. Right. So that is employee engagement. Right now, only 31% of people in the US are highly engaged. I mean, it's crazy. The lowest engagement scores we've ever seen in the history of the United States, keeping those scores. And so, you ask why, and oftentimes this is truly the fault or success of the manager. Because as we all know, people, although they leave and come to companies because of salaries and those kind of things, one of the real pivotal reasons people stay at a job or leave a job is because of their boss, right? If that boss is incredibly good at being a boss, and we're going to talk about some of those things in a second, they are so much more likely to have high engagement scores. So this is an interesting stat. So for those companies, these are small or medium-sized companies that scored in the top quartile of employee engagement, 41% lower absenteeism, 40% higher quality work, 20% higher sales, and 21% higher profitability. I mean, that's just crazy. That's crazy stats. Like I can have, and also a 59% less turnover. So if my employee engagement scores, the way my employees feel about our company is big, then we can keep people, engaged, and they'll be more productive. So some things that impact employee engagement is, making sure that they have the things to do their job right, the equipment, the materials. They like to see recognition and praise for doing good work. I think we haven't really trained our managers very well. I think um, I'm probably the last generation that got manager training at big companies, and then they killed it. And so a lot of us wonder why people are leaving companies, but we haven't even trained our managers or maybe even ourselves how to show gratitude to our employees, which we know we should be doing, how to encourage them, how to give recognition and praise. Those people should be coming to work feeling like, wow, I've done a good job and people are noticing, right? That's how you keep those people engaged. Making sure that their strengths aligned with what they do best, and that they're working in their strengths. And are we asking them, are you working in your strengths, or do you have a lot of tasks every day that you're doing that you don't love? And can we move around some things? I know that's hard sometimes, but it's amazing sometimes that you can find out if you ask the question. Jane was doing some things that she didn't love, and Bill was doing some things he didn't love, but they each loved each other's, and we could just change around their job responsibilities. But we're not asking. So we need to make sure that in those reviews, that we're asking. We need to review our people. 70% of companies with less than 80 employees don't review their people, and 80% of companies with less than 70 employees don't have job descriptions. So you can just start by
Wow.
giving job descriptions and then reviewing based on the job description.
So no reviews at all?
That's right. 70,
Wow.
I mean, yeah, 70%. I mean,
But I
crazy.
guess yeah, if 70% don't have job descriptions, I don't know what you would be reviewing. So I guess that makes sense. Like
Well, a
that's
lot of people
wild.
try to do reviews without the job descriptions, right? So
Wow.
you can do great just spending the time getting a job description together and then saying we're actually going to have annual reviews. I mean, or twice a year. It'd be awesome. Doesn't cost any money. I mean, a little time, not any money. And it's amazing that those actual statistics show that if you get reviewed well and that you know what you're expected to do, then you're going to have more engagement, and more engagement leads
Mhm.
to that more profitability and greater ability to stay at a company. So
My I've had great reviews and I've had no reviews. And maybe this is a millennial thing, maybe it's not, but I was like, I want reviews. I want to know, am I doing well?
yeah.
Am I like, I don't want to just show up and just do a thing and go home. Maybe that's a personality thing, but I'm like, I need feedback. Because how else do I know if I'm like, I don't want to just get fired one day. I want to know, where can I improve? So those reviews, I've personally found them to be, it's not like it almost can sound like a review can be a negative thing, but I really think for me, it was a positive thing because I want to know that I'm on the right track.
Yeah, and I think that's huge, especially with the mental health talk that we can kind of transition to. You
Yeah.
know, I, I feel like one of the reasons that people are really experiencing a lot of stress at work, well, I feel that way, but also it shows that on all the surveys, is that they are not getting any feedback from their supervisors, managers, leaders. They're not getting any feedback whatsoever unless they do something wrong and then they're getting yelled at. So
You
again,
kind of live in this like unknown, and there can be a fear in the unknown because you're like, am I going to get axed someday because I'm apparently not doing my job, but no one told me?
yeah, really important to give them feedback. And I like to say, I do a whole talk on employer reviews, but I like to say that if those employees that are the good employees, right? The good or the fine employees, not the bad employees, but the good or the fine employees, if they are not looking so forward to the day of their review, you're doing something wrong. That review should be so fun for them. They should get to hear specifics on why they're so valuable to the company, why you want to keep them, how you're going to help them, what this next year is going to look like, get them excited for the year. If we're not pumping them up and that's not like one of their favorite days, then we are missing it, because we get to speak
Wow.
and, you know, encouragement is oxygen, and we get to spend that time encouraging them. Too many people are using those reviews as, okay, these are the 4 things you did wrong this year and you need to fix. And that needs to be in a review, but that should be about 8% of the review. And the rest of the review really should be positive for those, good employees. right? For the
So you
employees
meant,
that are in performance incentive plans, obviously it's different.
yeah. Okay, so we got a few minutes left. I'd love for you to you're already heading there. Let's go into the mental health side of things and how big of a issue that is.
It's a big issue. We are seeing that some of the stats on mental health is 75% of workers are currently reporting at least one mental health challenge in the past year. This is an interesting one. 68% of millennials and 81% of Gen Zs left their job for mental health related reasons last year.
Are there definitions for what is a mental health event, or I can't remember what you said. What is that defined as?
Yeah, so mental health is defined. Is this? So this is the actual HIPAA, information. Mental health is the state of mental being that enables people to cope with the stresses of life, realize their abilities, learn well, and work well, and contribute to their community. It is closely linked to physical health. So if you don't, so mental health is, can you do your job well? Can you live your life normally? Is there something impeding that? So what this is saying is 77% of people are coming to work and there's pieces of their time that they're so stressed out that they can't do their job.
They can't
We've
cope.
never seen that before in the history of the world. We've just
They
never seen
can't they can't cope with what's going on.
Right, because if you talk to a therapist, there's this window, and I'm no therapist, but usually your window's fairly big of what you can handle before you kind of lose it, right? And so if people come at you and they say something that's wrong, or if you have a lot of stress that comes in, you're usually able to handle that and move on. But when you're in depression and anxiety, that window gets really small. And so if somebody comes into a meeting and all of a sudden they pop off at something and they get really angry, or that they seclude themselves and say, I can't come to work, right? Because that it's a disease. Like it's a mental health issue. So it's a health issue. It's kind of like if they had gallbladder problems, right? And so we've got to create room for those in our HR discussions. We've got to figure out, how do we handle that? We need to create kind of an area in our company, or a place in our company, where we're talking about, how do we lower the stress level? How do we make sure that when they come to work, it's not another thing on their plate, that we are supporting them? But we recognize also that about 30% of the reasons people are stressed out have absolutely nothing to do with their jobs. They may be sitting at their job stressed out, but it was because they have a sick child, you're taking care of an aging parent. There's so many things. Their finances are out of order and they're going to lose their house, so, but they bring that into their job because we're a whole person, right? So especially as Christian business owners, how do we support them while still keeping our business running, right? It would be so nice to be able to say to everybody that has any kind of stress, well, just don't come to work for a year. We'd love to give you this time off, but then we have to run businesses. So there is this very interesting balance between helping people and making sure the company doesn't go out of business. And if you only have one controller, and that controller has a mental health issue and has to take some time off, what do you do? What are you legally needing to do? There's all kinds of issues with small businesses being able to give the time off, and what's required and what's not required. So that's something that we're getting a lot of questions about right now, because a lot of people are coming into their employers and saying, I need an accommodation. I need to work from home 5 days a week. I need to not have stressful clients anymore. I need to not come to the staff meetings because the staff meetings are stressing me out. We're hearing a lot of that. And so what do we do? How do we handle it? Again, one of those hot button topics that we're probably not going to, be able to answer in the next 5 minutes. But again, something we did not see 4 or 5 years ago in the just the magnitude that we're seeing it now. There was a statistic that was shared this last week that 18% of people in the United States have experienced a major anxiety episode that is considered an anxiety episode by the National Institute of Health. It meets that definition within the past 12 months.
Mm.
18%. So that is a huge number.
That, yeah. And I imagine that, I can hear people on one end of the spectrum being like, what am I supposed to do? Bubble wrap everything and make everything safe and whatever. And it's like you can't do that because you have the business to run. But on the flip
Right.
side, it's like there is more stress and anxiety in our culture, whether you experience it or believe it or not. It's like it is what it is. And especially as Christian business owners, there's the aspect of, you know, like you said, God's put these people in our lives, and whether their anxiety is reasonable to you or not, there's an
Right.
opportunity there, but there is that balance. So, well,
There
listen,
is.
we've,
It's a tough one. It is a tough one, and I think we're going to find more and more out how we can support them yet keep our business in motion.
yeah, and I imagine there's also laws and legality around some of these things that, like, do you have to let that person work from home or do this or that? That also is changing
Yeah,
and
I'll
something
just
to
throw it
balance.
out there really quick so that you have the answer on that. The conversation is the most important. So, from a legal standpoint, you need to make sure that if somebody comes to you and says they need an accommodation for something, meaning they got to stay at home or whatever, you have the conversation, right? A lot of
Don't
CEOs
dismiss
just
it.
like they're just dismissing it, saying thank you so much. That they're not doing anything, but say
Mm.
it's called an interactive conversation, and at least have the conversation and try to have an accommodation. I mean, there's all kinds of labor attorneys, and I can help you find somebody. I don't do that. But I feel like it's an important thing for people to understand that as a small business, if you're a really small business, let's say you have 8 people, you may not have to give that accommodation.
Mm.
It doesn't mean that because they ask for it, you have to give it, especially
Right.
if you're a small business, and that would make it very difficult for you to do the thing that you do, whatever that is.
That's good. That's great. Well, I feel like we barely scratched the surface. So you've actually, it's like you've unlocked new things that I didn't even know I needed to think about. Which
Yes,
is
it
which is
kind of
good.
scared
That's
me.
yeah, that's
Scared
the
me.
goal of this conversation is we want to unpack some stuff and maybe pull the blinders off a little bit to see things we may have not been seeing before. I'd love to open it up. Let's take, we got 6 minutes according to my clock that just changed for some Q&A, and then I can give us a very quick wrap up. And then I want to also end with Cindi, where can people find you for to tap into your services or ask more questions, et cetera. So if you got a question, just unmute yourself and let her rip. I saw Barry had raised his hand. I'm gonna go ahead and let Barry go first.
Hey, Cindi, thank you so much for today. My question is really where you left off, but as it relates to the front end, the hiring side of employment, what are we
Yeah.
legally allowed to ask and not ask as it relates to somebody's mental health?
Yeah, you're not allowed to ask anything.
Okay.
I mean, unfortunately, it's just like a medical condition. You're not allowed to ask anything. The only thing you're allowed to ask in interviews is based on the job description that we've showed you and the whatever we put in there, it's necessary that you're on site 5 days a week. And that needs to be in your job description if you're requiring that, let's say, and that you need to be working on a computer and that you need to be in meetings twice a week with a group of people. Do you feel like you are capable of doing the things as outlined on the job description?
Okay. Thank you.
That's all you get to ask. Right. And hopefully, like let's say they have a disability and you have on the job description that you have to, you know, pack 100-pound boxes. And so when you ask the question, are you going to be able to pack, do everything on the job description? Let's say they don't have use of their upper arms, right? So we don't have to hire them for that job because they didn't meet the minimum requirements on the job description, right? So if they have a problem, a social anxiety problem, and they can't come to meetings, and it says you have to go to 2 to 3 meetings a week, that in person, then they need to represent that they can do that, right?
That brings up that importance of job descriptions that you mentioned earlier.
Yeah, especially when you hire, because these days what we're finding is we're seeing so much social anxiety now. We have so many people saying, I can't be at a company. I can't go to a meeting. I have all this social anxiety. And so if you don't put specifics on that job description, you might not be able to let them go. You might not be able to give them any kind
You got a legal issue now.
So you need to make sure those job descriptions have that in there.
That's great. When I worked at Alliance Defending Freedom, we worked with churches and ministries, and the attorneys' job descriptions were like thing number one that we had to get settled so that you didn't have legal issues on the back end when it came to firing somebody.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Who else got a
Cynthia,
question?
I got a question.
Go for it.
My name is Angelo. I actually am an employment lawyer, and I very much appreciate your presentation. Very helpful and useful. My question for you is really around some of the statistics that you were providing and where those come from.
Yeah,
I
I
do a
can.
lot of the same kind of a lot of recruiting and retention, and I think that when you actually have data points for the audience, that's so helpful.
Yeah,
Like
I'm
what
so
you were
glad to
saying
send
about.
them your
Yeah,
way. I'll send all they're mostly articles, some books. So I'll send you kind of a list of where all those came from.
it's wonderful. Yeah,
Yeah,
thank you
Cindy,
for.
if you get those to me, I'll compile. I'm going to make a quick brief note section of everything we covered, and we can include that in there to send out to all the members.
Super glad to do it.
Daniel.
Yeah, thank you, Cindy. This is very helpful. I have one question for top 3 reasons for the retention. One is it's a compensation, right? Number 2, health benefit, and number 3 is career growth. It seems like that tied to the company growth. If the company doesn't grow too much, basically, company may not have the resource to, or capacity to pay people well. How do you advise to the company if their revenue stay flat, doesn't grow like 20% every year, 30% every year?
Yeah.
What is your suggestion there?
Well, you have to make some strategic decisions. Like, for example, if you hire somebody, say they're right out of college, and you're going to pay them $65,000 a year.
Right.
They're not going to be able to stay there at your company for the next 20 years at $65,000 a year. Like, that's not logical. And back in the day when we used to hire people, we just assumed that somebody was going to, retire with us. That was kind of the deal. And now we're realizing quickly that that's never going to happen. Unless we're a bigger company in many cases and can grow them and they can become the CEO or whatever, they can move through. So it might be a reality check for you about how long are you going to keep people? Like, what is success? So when you hire that kid out of college for $65,000, and you can't, maybe if the company doesn't grow, you can't make that next step for that employee, then you need to create your strategy along with, okay, we want to keep them 3 years. So if we want to keep them 3 years, then we need to keep having a kind of a flow of people coming in so that we train people. And so then these people go out rather than just praying that these people stay even at the $65,000, right? So, but if your company grows and you're able to have that next level, and that $65,000 person gets to go to $80,000, that's awesome. But you've got to decide, if you're a company that's not really growing, in that huge amount a year, then you need to create a new strategy with those people coming in and recognizing, we understand that this is probably going to be your 3-year job for you, and we're going to really help you find your next thing.
Right, exactly.
Be a great referral source for you.
Right. And if the owner, they have the growth mindset, they can bring the company to the next level, everybody can follow that, journey together.
Absolutely. And like I said earlier, there are some people that don't need to grow. There are some people, like maybe they're in the second half of their career, they don't want any more stress. I get a lot of people that want to work part-time for our clients that used to be a CFO. They don't want to do that anymore. They just want to be a high-level bookkeeper. And they're going to take especially part-time, and they're going to take that lower pay because they don't want the stress of being the CFO or the controller. They're just going to be the bookkeeper 20 hours a week. So again, there are some people that aren't looking for an increase in pay all the time. You just have to decide. Again, just like anything else, when you're looking at your cash flow strategy, your marketing strategy, you need to look at your people strategy. And this all needs to be part of a people strategy. And it could be that we replace people every 3 years. It could be that we go after people that don't really need an increase in pay. It could be that our company's growing so much that we're just trying to get people in the front door and keep them, so that we're going to make sure that we have these steps for them.
Exactly. kind of like we have to find an alignment, right?
Yeah, you do. And different companies are and different companies in different parts of their life cycle are different. But what
Yeah.
I find is that if the CEOs have the thought on everybody comes and stays for their life, and they're not creating that, they're not even thinking through what that strategy is, that's when they get disappointed and they're like, oh my gosh, all these people quit all the time, right? But again, this is the new reality we have. So we can't change what the millennials and the Gen Zs do. We're not going to change that. We're going to work with it.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Cindy. Appreciate
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, we're just over time, so I want to make sure I honor Cindy's time and all of our members' time. This has been really great. Again, I feel like this is just scratching the surface. So, Cindy, if people got questions, they want to follow up, they want to tap into innovative outsourcing, where we'll send out your information, everything, but where can they find you, follow you,
Yeah,
etc.?
so we are, especially on LinkedIn, we have a newsletter, the small business newsletter that goes out about once a week. So you can follow us on LinkedIn, and it's a small business HR newsletter. That's a great way to get information. It's all content that I develop. So hopefully that's really helpful. Innovative Outsourcing is our website. There's a hyphen in between innovative and outsourcing, and kind of our big push right now, and the thing we're really wanting to help small businesses do is we do fractional HR that starts at like 3 hours a month. So it's a pretty
That's great.
affordable way to have an HR director that is assigned to you. So
Love it.
yeah.
Love it. All right. Well, members, you heard where to find her. And yeah, fractional HR, for a lot of us, that may be something we want to look into. Because again, this isn't something we started with it. This isn't something you want to be reactive to. This is a proactive thing. And Cindi is a phenomenal resource. I think you've heard that today. Cindi, thank you so much. Let me pray us out real quick and then we'll end everything. Father, thank you. I just thank you for the body of Christ, and that we all have different gifts and we all have got different talents. And it's just amazing to see the body of Christ at work. And that's why Iron Forums exists in part, is because we all got different things that we bring to the table, and we may be doing well in some areas and then really struggling in others. But there's people within the body of Christ that may be able to make up for our weaknesses with their strengths. And so we just thank you for Cindi. We pray a blessing upon her. Lord, if it be your will, give her more influence, more speaking engagements, more clients and small businesses to help grow innovative outsourcing. And Lord, I just pray for a deeper friendship between her business and our ministry in the future. And we ask all this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
All right.
Thanks,
Thank you,
everybody.
Cindi. Thank you, everybody.